Most parents that I know want their children to be happy and healthy when they grow up. But by nature, children imitate those around them. So the question then is, are parents modeling the life that they wish for their kids?
So the giant question is this: how do we, as parents, teachers, school administrators, policymakers, coaches, how do we prepare our kids for a future that doesn't yet exist? All while making them healthier, more creative, more innovative, better problem solvers, and overall successful contributors to society. That is the question, and this podcast has the answers. My name is Coach Mike, and welcome to the MindFit Method Podcast.
Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm Coach Mike, and welcome to this episode of the MindFit Method Podcast. All right, so today I want to talk about something because I interact with a lot of people, and so many people tell me, especially parents, some of the same things. They want their kids to be happy, they want them to be healthy, they want them to be successful, they want them to do whatever makes them happy. All of those kind of cliche sentences that we know are true. We absolutely know that parents want those things. But the question is, kids today are bombarded, literally bombarded by influences on the outside, right? Because of social media, because of just technology in general, because of the people that they hang out with. There's just so much that our kids are constantly getting hit with today. And when we look at our own lives, when we say we want our kids to be happy and we want them to be healthy, well, let's start first with the whole healthy portion. So we want our kids to be healthy. And what does that mean? We hope that they're not sick. They hope that they're not injured at all. We hope that they're able to do everything that they want to do and don't necessarily have limitations of doing those things because of their health. So here's question number one. And yes, it's a little personal. I get it. But do you live that lifestyle? Are you hindered by things that your health don't allow you to do? And look, there are some things that we cannot control. And I'll use myself as an example. When I was 17 years old, I was pulling out of an intersection on Route 15 in New Jersey. I was crossing over the highway. I was crossing over the northbound side to go to the southbound side. And when I did that, I did not see a car coming up a hill on a dark, gloomy night in which the street light at the intersection was not working. I did not see a car coming at me, and they wound up broadsiding me at 65 miles an hour. And, I was in a little red Dodge Daytona, and it was a Jeep Wrangler that hit me and hit me directly into my driver's side door. And I can tell you that that moment absolutely changed my life. I was all ready to go into the military. I had wanted to be a police officer. I had no intention of going to college at the time. My dad was a chief ranger growing up as a kid, and I wanted to work in law enforcement. And in a split second, my whole life changed. And I didn't realize it actually at that time, because at that time, everyone around me just said, no, 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 you're going to heal. You're going to be fine. You're going to be able to do whatever you want to do. And, because of that, I wound up breaking the ball right off my femur in my hip. And in order to repair that, the surgeons had to put a plate, a pin, and 4 screws. And I remember all the way, everything was fine. I continued to talk to the recruiter. Everything was good. There was no problems whatsoever. And then I remember all of a sudden it was February of my senior year. And I remember the recruiter coming in, and, he actually came into the school that day to talk to other students as well. And I remember walking up to him and be like, hey, what's going on? And I was still on crutches. So that accident happened in September. I was still on crutches until April, actually, but this was in February. And I remember he kind of blew me off. And I was like, wait, this guy was so into me joining the military and doing, achieving all these goals that I had. And I remember walking up to him and saying, hey man, what's going on? I'm so excited for this. And he said to me, yeah. He's like, well, yeah, you'll be good to go, man. Don't worry. The only thing is you just have to get all that hardware out of your leg. And I remember looking at him and saying, I can't. That is a part of me now. I don't have the ability to do that. And he looked right at me and he said, well, then unfortunately, this might be a case of thanks, but no thanks, because you would be a liability now to the government. so you would not be able to enlist. And I remember being shattered. My whole world that I had intended to happen changed. So there are things that occur that you have no control of, right? And then to make it more interesting, after 5 years of having that plate and pin and four screws inside of me, the ball of my femur actually died. It's called avascular necrosis, and I had no choice but to get a hip replacement at the age of 22. So that was a big early shock to my life. So there are things that happen that you can't control, but there are also things within your health that you absolutely have control over. Your activity level, your exercise level, what you eat, what your nutrition consists of, how much sleep do you get, and how do you manage your stress, all of those things. So while there are many things, whether it's an illness, there's so many amazing people I know that have battled cancer. These were curveballs that came at them that they never ever expected. But there are also so many things that you can control. And the question is, if we want our kids to grow up to be healthy, and we know that a large percentage of their health is going to be dictated on, their personal choices, right? Their self-inflicted choices, then are we showing them that it is possible to stick with those choices and be successful at it? And I don't mean, crash dieting. I don't mean anything like that. But I mean just consistent healthiness, consistent activity levels, consistently building exercise into your weeks, consistently eating healthy, consistently getting enough sleep. Are we living the life or modeling the life that we are hoping that our kids have one day? And if we're not, then someone else is going to model that for them. And look, as parents, we know there's only so much influence that we have, especially in today's world of media and technology. But you want to give them that foundation to be able to do that. And on the other side of it, it's also being happy. And you know, in the social media world that we live in today, everything or everyone wants to make everything look perfect, right? The pictures that people post on Facebook or on Instagram are perfect, where people are traveling to, how their life is just amazing, the new superfood that they're eating that they love that's made them lose 10 pounds. And when that camera goes off, for so many people, the happiness gets turned off too, because their real life is actually very different than what they're portraying online. But in the home, and when our kids see what our lives are like, they're not just getting the snapshots of reels or stories or pictures on social media and then judging that to assess how their life is or how our life is as parents. They see us all the time. And look, I know as parents, we're always under an incredible amount of stress. We always try to put on the good face and to, make it look like we've got this, everything's under control. But I can tell you right now, kids aren't stupid. All right. Kids may not indicate that they know, but so many times they do. So when it comes to being happy, the question is, what makes you happy? And what's funny? For so many people, you ask, someone what makes them happy. And so many times their answer is, oh, if I just had $1 million, I'd be fine. But it's not. That brings in a whole other slew of problems. And we see it every day. We see someone that wins the lottery, and the happiest moment for them is most probably the day that they cash the check and the day they make their first purchase. And after that, it becomes a nightmare. And so many people wind up actually committing suicide that wind up winning the lottery because their lives are completely upheaved. But for other people, being happy means doing the things that I want to do. It's not just about money. And oftentimes the things that we want to do involve money. But so many times it's just being able to do the things that we want to do, whether it's be with our families, whether it's start a business and actually make it grow, whether it is, part of what makes me happy is being healthy and being able to, utilize exercise and nutrition to make myself happy. That's just something for me, it's extremely important. But if you're going to define success as happiness, then you really have to come to the conclusion as to what makes you happy. And, if every person, it's going to be completely different. For every child, it's different. Some kids would make them happier than anything is to, win the football championship for their team. Another child, it's to, compete and become an excellent pianist or something like that. Like there's so many things that make people happy. But in the end, right, the thing that, the one thing that we can do that leads to happiness is understanding our own level of persistence. Recently, one of my recent podcasts, I talked about are grades really indicative of a child's future success? And the studies are showing grades have nothing to do with it, nothing at all. It's their personality and their perseverance that has to do whether or not a person can be successful. And again, as I said in that podcast, the definition of success varies from person to person, but it's about staying persistent, staying consistent. That is the key to everything. And, again, I'll use myself as an example. Um, After I wound up breaking my hip and finding out that I could not go into the military, I remember it was a quick shift because I actually remember my dad and, love him dearly, but he kind of gave me some tough love. And his response was, okay, well, then what's the plan? And I was like, can I just have a second to wallow in my sorrow? And, he kind of gave me that. But at the same time, he was like, so, Mike, you got to figure out what you're going to do then. And for me at the time, I was so into lifting and fitness that the thing that I fell back on was, well, I'll go to school for exercise physiology. That's what I want to be able to do. And, that was my goal then to become happy. But what I've learned in my life is that life is about consistency and consistent pivots, which is so, so important. If we aren't consistently pivoting for what, number one, will make us happy, number two, what is actually working, we're not going to succeed. And we want our kids to see this. We want our kids to see that we can be persistent and do something. I don't care. And again, using myself as an example, when I was probably, I guess, in my late 30s, right around 40, I'd been a musician for a long time. I wanted to go in the studio and start recording some of the songs that I had written, which was, a lot of fun. It made me happy. And did any of those songs become platinum albums? No, not at all. But it made me happy to be able to create. Fast forward years later, I actually worked in the financial world for a very long time. And people don't realize this, but I actually worked in the student loan industry for about a decade. And when the Obamacare bill was passed, in order for the bill to pass, they had to show $4 billion in savings in that first year. And the way that they did that was they eliminated banks and student loan lenders from being able to do student loans. So in the past, you used to be able to do your Stafford loans and things like that at your local bank, whether it was PNC Bank, Chase Bank, a nonprofit lender, or even someone like Sallie Mae. You used to be able to do your loans through them. And then all of a sudden, in the Obamacare bill was passed, the ability to do that, it was called the FELP law, they got rid of the FELP program. So now everything had to go directly through the Treasury. So when that happened, me and 30,000 of my closest friends that I had been working in the industry for, a decade, suddenly all lost our jobs because all of a sudden banks couldn't do student loans anymore. And you had to pivot. So I had built a successful career in that industry and had to pivot. And literally, I was finishing my MBA at the time and wound up working in healthcare. And in true transparency, I figured that I'd be working in healthcare for 3 months until I found a quote unquote real job. And guess what? It's been 13 years now, and I'm still working in healthcare and have been able to make a career out of that. Back in 2017, I wanted to pivot again. I wanted to make myself happy and be happy and build a business. And that's where MindFit, really came to be. Then in 2020, COVID hit and MindFit, the physical location of MindFit, had to close. And that was devastating. Obviously, it was a huge financial loss, but it was also, you built something that you just put your blood, sweat, and tears in for years. Working 18-hour days every day, for as long as you can remember, and then suddenly watching something disappear. But once again, you have to be able to pivot, because I knew that I knew that if I just walked away from it and never did anything with it again, I would not be happy. So even though it was a failure, and I hate to say this, guys, but your kids have to see you fail, because if you don't fail, or if they don't see that you fail, they're going to assume that life is only full of successes and not understand why they fail when they fail. And look, I have failed many times in my life, but every time I fail, I think of what is probably my favorite quote of all time. And everyone who knows me is probably smiling at this point, which is from the movie Rocky Balboa. And Rocky's talking to his son because his son is upset because he feels like his life, he's living in the shadow of his father and he just can't create his own life. And Rocky says, the world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place. And I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. So it's okay. It's okay to fail. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to do those things. But after that happened, you have to pivot again. Or I had to pivot again. And that's where the release of the book, The Mind Fit Method, came from. And now I'm seeing how that is growing and where that's going, and a homeschool program and things like that. But once again, I'm pivoting again. And I'm working with another company who frankly does unbelievable STEM programs. And I'm so excited to be part of what they're doing as well, and really help expose what they're doing to as many kids as possible through talents and skills that I've acquired over the years in the world of business. So now that is what makes me happy. So it's not that happiness is a goal in the end. Happiness is forever changing. But we have to continue to strive. We have to stay consistent. We have to be persistent. We need a hell of a lot of tenacity to be able to keep pushing in this world. Because if we are going to show our kids that they can be successful in being happy and being healthy, right? Let's just say success is being happy and being healthy. So if they can achieve that success, they can model it in a way off of what they see you do. And it's not that you're not going to make mistakes. You're going to make plenty. It's not that you're not going to fail. You're going to fail. And you're going to have to pivot on a regular basis. But don't be afraid to show them all that of happiness, of being healthy, and of really trying to reach your goals, fight for your goals. Someone said to me the other day that, exercise was such a chore, and it was such a pain for them to try to do. And, I'm thinking to myself, God, exercise is an opportunity, but it's also a gift, right? There are tons of people that cannot exercise for one reason or another. I was in that boat. I was on crutches for 9 months when I broke my leg because my bone would not fuse until I received a special device, and the insurance company wouldn't approve it after 6, 8 months. It was ridiculous. But there was so much time in my life where I couldn't do anything. And then there's been other times in my life where I absolutely had the ability to do whatever I wanted. I could do any exercise that I wanted to do, and I didn't because I was at a funk in my life. And, you're going to hit those, but you got to turn it around. You got to start clawing up again and saying, okay, well, this is where I used to be. And that's the other thing. Don't always look back and be like, that was me back then, and it was so great. Let me tell you something. As we get older, there is nothing in some ways similar to what I can do now to what I could do when I was in my 20s. But there's also a lot of things that I can do now that I couldn't do in my 20s. And whether it's health, whether it's fitness, anything. So yes, again, it's about the power of the pivot. And if you can't pivot on a regular basis, you've got to teach yourself to be able to do that. You got to teach yourself it's okay to pivot, that it's okay to fail, but that it's also okay to celebrate the successes when you hit them. I know you can do this, and it's so important for us to attack life like that because we need our kids to see that consistency, see that persistency, and be able to model themselves after it. Hey everyone, you may notice that I don't run any ads in my podcast. I do that on purpose because I want to make sure it's about getting the message of stronger minds and smarter bodies through the Mind Fit Method out to the world. But if you could do us a favor and try to help us become a top 100 podcast by sharing this on your social media, I would forever be grateful. Thanks so much, guys, and until next time.